ESPN Radio. This is the Thundering Herd Podcast.
I think I'm going to break down the home run derby. Wrong show. Didn't watch a second of it. Here's what to me is really interesting. This is what's really interesting to me. And one of the things I like about this show is that I host it. And my audience, whenever I give them meaty subjects, always responds. My audience always responds. The smarter the topic, the smarter I am, the smarter you are. You elevate me, I try to elevate you. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. This story interests me because this is life, not a home run derby. The National Football League Players Association, that's the union for football players. Okay, those are the NFLPA, they support the players. I know it sounds ridiculous. We think of unions, we think of pipe fitters and construction workers. That's like they need union representation. Teachers' unions. We don't think of rich millionaires needing a union. But players do need representation, so they have a players' union. Oh, they're well compensated, but it's a players' union. They don't like what the Cowboys and the Broncos are doing. They are upset with it. They believe there's collusion going on. Those two teams have talked. If you keep Demaryius Thomas deals down, we can keep Des Bryant's deal down. Whoa! That is so happening all the time. When the owners were facing a lockout in the uncapped 2010 season, you don't think they made deals? Didn't the NFL fine them for collusive behavior? Folks, I think Wharton actually has a class, Collusion, How Business Really Gets Done. Maybe I'm overly cynical, but I think there's a very thin line in life between collusion and a deal. And let me ask you, what is a salary cap? It's just two sides agreeing to keep LeBron's salary down, isn't it? NBA's got a max deal clause. You're just agreeing to it. What's the difference between collusion and a deal? Agreement. That's what the salary cap is. That's what the max deal is. I think we collude all the time. I'm divorced. My ex-wife and I collude when it comes to our kids. We call it fence building. Let's build a fence even though we're not married with our kids. We have to have a consistent narrative and consistent dialogue. You can't say one thing and I say another. We are colluding. We're not telling our kids what we're saying. We devise a plan, have a certain symmetry, therefore our daughter doesn't work one of us against the other. It's collusion. Ever done a cash deal with a landscaper, guy that mows your lawn, pool guy? Whoa! You're colluding against an entity. The government. Think collusion's all bad? Let me ask you. Let's say two networks. NBC Sports Network, Fox Sports Network, the two CEOs sit down. And they could both bid on the World Cup, FIFA, don't trust them, or the Olympics, IOC. And neither company can afford both. So the two guys sit down, the guys that run it, and say, you bid on one, we'll bid on the other, but let's not make IOC or FIFA rich because they're corrupt. We believe they're corrupt. And let's not immobilize our business. Let's not negotiate ourselves into oblivion. If we outbid and go crazy, then I'm going to have to fire workers at my NBC company. I'm going to have to fire 2,000 middle-class citizens. And you're going to have to, at your company, fire 3,000. So if we get into this bidding war, we're going to have to lay off all sorts of people right after we sign the contract. That's collusion. Is it a terrible thing? Would it be the world's worst thing not to hand over money to FIFA or the IOC and instead keep all those families together intact and not fire dads and moms throughout the country? Would that be a terrible thing? I mean, seriously, I think we do collusion all the time. It's just deals to benefit people we like, and that's how we all are. We're all hypocrites, right? Keep the government out of my life. Keep the government. Where's my welfare check? Keep the government out of my life. Hey, can you guys fix that bridge, that pothole in front of my house? Oh, I thought you hated the government. Oh, unless they benefit you. I mean, when the NFL owners, and maybe I'm cynical, I'm going to bring Jack Ford on in this hour, the attorney, but when the NFL owners have these meetings, now, I want you to think about this. These are billionaires. Jerry Jones, Dan Snyder, Mavericks. 32 billionaires. Golf, steaks, brandy, padded slippers, poker, and bourbon. Those guys blink in Morse code. You don't think they talk? You don't think Teamsters get greased in New York City construction? I've got a business, wine retail business. You should see state-to-state alcohol licensing. Good luck in Rhode Island. I'm not trying. I mean, my staff this morning they're outraged at me. You are for collusion. No, I'm saying there's a thin line between collusion and a deal. And when I hear this Cowboy thing and this Bronco thing, and I think to myself, what if NFL owners colluded? And that would allow the average guy, the school teacher, could take his son to a football game because the ticket prices stayed at $67 a ticket and not $245 a ticket. I mean, when I watch stadiums now, I don't see kids in stadiums. Why? Because dads can't afford to take their kids to games. If there was collusion which kept prices down, would it be outrageous? I mean, it's just a word everybody's petrified of. I remember, you probably didn't hear this. I was told a story about this. Howard Stern years ago ran for governor of New York under the Libertarian Party. It was the only party that would take him. And it was also a party that at the time he could give some publicity to. So Howard Stern told the story on the air. I didn't hear it, but I think Vince, my producer, is the one that relayed the story to me once. That basically the Libertarian Party said, okay, we'll support you, but if you win, you got to hire a bunch of our libertarians in your office. So Howard's like, man, I really learned what politics was. There were all these deals. If I won, we'll support you. If you do this, what is that? It's making deals. I mean, politics, our country. You don't think lobbyists, our government, our country isn't making deals? Colluding? I don't know. I read that Cowboy Denver Broncos situation, and I just sit there and I think, yeah, absolute power corrupts absolutely. But I've always thought those NFL owner meetings, you're talking the 32 richest Mavericks in the world. What is a salary cap? What is a max deal in the NBA? An agreement, to me, to compress salaries. That's what it is. Oh, yeah, there's a home run derby last night. We'll spend 3 hours on that. My staff, you should have seen it. It was unbelievable. First of all, I think if you have to have a slam dunk contest, a home run derby, a three-point shooting contest, an NHL skills challenge, if you're an American radio host and that has to drive your show, you have given up. I work too hard. You are too valuable to me to spend hours talking about the NBA slam dunk contest. I'm not going to do it. What's trending now, brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Drink it straight up, sip it slow. Have you tried 5 Hour Energy lately? So, Stanzik, are you outraged that I have basically fallen on the side of random collusion happening everywhere? Are you deeply troubled by that, Stanzik?
No, I'm more troubled by other parts of you.
You're in the herd. The Thundering Herd Podcast.
I think if you want to watch the Home Run Derby, watch the Home Run Derby. I think it's great. I'm not mocking you. I'm not interested in it. As I say on my radio show, I'm not telling you how to think. I'm just telling you how I think. I don't watch the Home Run Derby. I saw highlights of it. I thought Cincinnati looked like they were just loving it. And I think a lot of these mid-sized cities like Baltimore and Indianapolis and Cincinnati and St. Louis, I think they should have more of these events. I went to the Super Bowl in New York and nobody cared. I'm not joking. I mean, in New York's one of my favorite places in the world. I mean, of my 10 favorite places I've been to, New York's way up the list. They couldn't have been less interested. And you see this all the time. Then they moved the draft to a slightly smaller city, Chicago, and the city was totally into it. Cincinnati was into the home run derby. Good for them. I mean, I've gone to Indianapolis probably 5 times for these big national events. The people deeply care how America thinks of them. They have limitations as a city, but they work their tail off. That nobody works harder. You put these major events like the NFL draft in New York City. New York City's got a million options. They just don't care. And frankly, the traffic's bad. The airports are tough to get out of and into. To me, the Kansas Cities, as long as the weather's not a deterrent in like January through March, Kansas City, Indianapolis, St. Louis, is Portland, Oregon, San Antonio. These cities embrace these events like the Home Run Derby. They go crazy. It means a lot to the people there. Give those events to mid-sized cities. I'm not going to watch the Home Run Derby. Doesn't do a thing for me. If you watched it, knock yourself out. But it's the slam dunk contest. It's the three-point shooting contest. It's the skills challenge. It's the Home Run Derby. I don't watch those. I'm not bothered if you watch them. I'm not bothered at all. Apparently, baseball, I read the story and I saw a highlight package for about 7 minutes this morning. Give baseball some credit. They've been historically a very rigid sport run by old white guys. They were pretty nimble on this. They shortened it from 5 minutes to 4. More home runs were hit this year than any other year, and it didn't take as long. So hats off for baseball that was nimble, that allowed, a little movement, and it's a bunch of young sluggers. Good for them. Now I got to guess the ratings on the Home Run Derby. I'm not part of the rating, obviously. Let's guess the ratings. Baseball games, regardless of the network, get about a 0.6 to a 1.1. So I would say this is 4.5 times that. Let me guess a 5.1 for the Home Run Derby. I'll guess a 5.1. 4.7. So I got it. 4.7's good.
Colin, we gave you the ding on 5-1 and 4-7. It was a 4-9.
Yeah, that's about what the Home Run Derby gets. That's about what it gets. A 4-9, yeah, that's fine. I'll say this. There's nothing else going on. It's the summer, and it was a ballpark. That kid for the Dodgers, holy moly. That kid for the Dodgers, that center fielder, that lefty, that ball just jumps off his bat. Jock Peterson, holy moly. Just, he doesn't look that big, but I watched the highlights this morning. The ball just flies off his bat. All right, Austin says, before I get to my next topic, which I think is very interesting, Austin, you're in the herd. Fire away. Thanks for calling.
Hey, Colin, thanks for taking my call. Huge fan of the show.
Thanks.
I guess you kind of just proved me wrong a little bit because you kind of touched on it, but how would you talk about women's soccer and men's tennis, being that they're global sports and everybody loves them, but you adamantly did not want to talk about the Home Run Derby, which was the best we've seen in a long time.
They're games. There's like standings in games. It's like I will talk about games that matter. The World Cup is deciding the best team in the world in soccer for one gender. That's a game.
I hear you, man, but this was a huge event. I think that it was just amazing.
Yeah, you think it's amazing. It got a 4-9. The soccer got a 16. 30 million people watch soccer. That's a huge event. Home Run Derby in the big cities didn't even get a number. It's big in Cincinnati, but it got a 4-9. You go look at the biggest ratings this year in sports, top 50, it won't make it. It will not be one of the top 50 rated sporting events in America this year. And I would say after about 25, most aren't big events. The big event is a U.S. Open, the Masters, NBA playoffs, Western Conference Finals, NFL games. A lot of NFL games qualify. Bowl games. That was a slam dunk contest. But I have no problem with you watching it. But you deserve better from me than me breaking down a slam dunk contest for 3 hours. You've come to expect me to work harder than that. That's not something I'm going to talk about. And by the way, I gave you a warning. The Pro Bowl gets a big rating. I won't talk about the Pro Bowl. It's not anti-baseball I'm taking a stance here. It's anti-shtick. I'll never spend hours on the Home Run Derby, the Pro Bowl. Now, tonight's the game that decides Game 7 of the World Series. That matters. If there's a late game situation, I'm going to watch the All-Star game tonight. I absolutely will watch the All-Star game. It's the only All-Star game I watch. And you could have a situation late in the game that decides if the Royals or the Cardinals get home field advantage. That matters. Last night, it's icing on a cake. It's not the steak. It's not, that's not the entree. It's a dessert. And I try not to eat desserts. That's what it is. I'll talk entrees. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on dessert.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
By the way, I'm going to watch the baseball All-Star game tonight. I don't want people to think I'm not talking the home run derby because it's baseball. It's on our network, right? I mean, Suits will probably be upset today that I'm not going to talk about it. But I refuse to talk about sticky events as lead topics on my show. I would never spend any time on the NBA Slam Dunk Contest or the NHL Skills Challenge. It's nothing against the sport. I understand why you create them. I think it's really cool that when a guy hits a home run, you can immediately see the distance. There's some cool technology. And I have no problem with anybody that wanted to watch it. I'm not leading it with it's not leading my radio show. It is what it is. You watch what you want to watch. I watch a lot of HBO. I watch Pickers. I watch weird shows. I watch Smithsonian Channel, National Geographic. Okay? A lot of people don't want to watch that stuff. That's what I like to watch. My kids are on Netflix all day, all right? But I'm going to get to Jack Ford before the end of the hour. He's an attorney, works for 60 Minutes Sports, CBS, on this collusion thing, because I think there's a lot of collusion out there, and I think the difference between collusion and making a deal is a very thin line, and I think maybe I'm overly cynical, but I think a lot of people are naive. I think it happens everywhere, every day, and we're all doing it. This story is very interesting, and I love it because they use 20 years of data. And let's be frank here. Almost everybody that listens to my radio show likes football. It may be college, it may be pro, but let's speak of pro football here. It's the most popular sport in America. Either we like it, we've played it, we bet on it, DraftKings it, we do something, we're connected to it, right? We host Super Bowl parties at minimum. So the Wall Street Journal did a very interesting article. Stu Wu did a very interesting article. He said basically, you've seen the best of Geno Smith of the Jets. Now, it's not just about Geno Smith. Here's the numbers, 20 years of data. Since 1995, 13 quarterbacks have started at least a dozen games in each of their first 3 NFL seasons. That's a pretty good sample. On average, these quarterbacks improve significantly rookie year to their second year. After that, the improvements, small enough to suggest 2 years is all you need to determine whether a quarterback is going to make it in the NFL. As rookies, those 13 quarterbacks, 57% completion percentage, 17 TDs, 15 picks. Quarterback rating is 77. The figures jump in year 2 to 59, 20, 13, and 84. But the third year, more often than not, is a plateau year. People have now film on you. You have shown what you're going to show. And this is my takeaway on this. We try to convince ourselves, because the NFL increasingly is all about the quarterback. We try to convince ourselves he's going to be something, and he's just not. And I bought into Geno Smith the first year. My thing was good size, good arm, nimble, mobile. Let's give this kid a chance. There's some quality here as I like. It's not like it's Jimmy Clausen where he was too small. Or Brandon Whedon, I don't think he's big enough. He was big enough. He had good feet. He was mobile. I was like, there's something here. By year 2, I bailed on Geno Smith. Why? Because clearly halfway through the year, he was having 5, 6, 7 completion games. We've seen it. He can't read defenses consistently. He has awful judgment in crisis. It's over. So the first year I saw some things. Just give the kid a chance. Peyton Manning first year in the NFL threw a lot of picks. But by mid to late second year, you know what you got. And Geno Smith Second year's 59% completions, as many picks as TDs, 77 quarterback rating. He may go up a little bit, but even if he does, because he has a better coordinator, he is what he is. Not good enough to carry a bad team, good enough to start on an average team, but you can do better. And that's what he is. You go look at Andrew Luck. Second year, 60% completions, 23 TDs, 9 picks, 87 quarterback rating. That's now what his quarterback rating is. He does throw some picks, but he's good enough to carry an awful roster. And that really is a Hall of Fame quarterback. Can you carry an average roster? Peyton Manning carried a couple of average rosters. Tom Brady has. Drew Brees has. Andrew Luck is. If you look at Russell Wilson, by year 2, Russell Wilson, 63% completions, 26 TDs, 9 picks, 101 quarterback rating. That's what he is. He doesn't make a ton of mistakes. He's good with his feet. In his first couple of years, he ran around a lot, made crucial throws. He has certain limitations on completion percentage because he's smaller, but that's what he is. And nobody wants to hear it because for a lot of people listening, your quarterback, you're praying, but outside of Kurt Warner, there is not a lot of late bloomers, and you don't want to ever be exception guy. I'm sure there's a white bat somewhere in South America. I'm sure somebody who smoked for 60 years didn't get cancer. There's always an exception to everything. Always. Always. But that doesn't make it the rule. And you can't, in business, seek exceptions to profit. You've got to go with what works. And it's really, I look around the NFL right now. I'll give you an example. Ryan Tannehill in Miami. They so desperately think Ryan Tannehill's going to pop to a different level. Ryan Tannehill is what he is. And you saw it by his second year. He is good, not great, better than average, could never carry a bad roster, never going to be top 6, 7, 8 in the league, better than average, has a good body, can move a little bit, but not great down the field. And all the great quarterbacks can throw the ball down the field. Aaron Rodgers, Terry Bradshaw, Troy Aikman, Tom Brady. They can all throw the seam route 32 yards on a dime. He doesn't. Check down, big body, can make the throws. He can go up slightly here and there. People are saying, oh, he really grew second to third year. Not really. He's going to be an 86 to 88 quarterback rating guy. He's not going to pop and get to the next level. By the way, good news, he's better than average. I'd take him over Andy Dalton. I'd take him over a lot of guys in this league. I'd take him over right now Jay Cutler, who I bailed on. And people think Jay Cutler has talent. He's not as talented as Matt Stafford, but he may be better above the shoulders. He's not as talented, though. But Tannehill is what he is. He's better than average. You can win playoff games with him. But he's going to need a great roster to go far in the playoffs. He can't carry it. He can't do Andrew Luck. And that's what he is. And that's okay. But what's happened in Miami, after Dan Marino, they had so many swings and misses. They are so desperate for a quarterback. Ryan Tannehill's never going to be Troy Aikman. Okay, he's not going to be. Now, the other guy, like Matt Ryan's a guy that I liked. But by year 2, if you go back and look at Matt Ryan's numbers, I had him about 7th in the league. That was before Russell Wilson and Andrew Luck broke in. Now I've got him about 9 or 10. That's about what he is. Matt Ryan needs a great roster to move in the playoffs. He can't carry it. At any time during the NFL's history, there's always about 4 Hall of Fame quarterbacks playing. If you really look at the history of the NFL, at any one time, the numbers may be slightly better, slightly worse. There's about 4 Hall of Famers, and right now, Peyton's a Hall of Famer, Brady's a Hall of Famer, Luck will be a Hall of Famer, Breeze is a Hall of Famer, and there's a couple other guys we'll wait on. Tony Romo, if Tony Romo, Eli Manning, if Eli won another Super Bowl, he's in. If Tony won 1 Super Bowl with his numbers and played for 4 more years, he's in. Aaron Rodgers, he'll be a Hall of Famer. You always have about 4 or 5. You're around there. Matt Ryan's not going to be a Hall of Famer. Ryan Tannehill's not going to be a Hall of Famer. Geno Smith is not going to start this year. So, very interesting study that you basically know by year 2 what you have for a quarterback. You kind of know.
Colin Cowherd.
the Thundering Herd Podcast.
Well, the Cowboys and the Broncos, the NFL Players Association is saying, whoa, 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 there's collusion here with Des Bryant, Demaryius Thomas, the wide receiver. They have colluded to keep their salaries down, and to that I say there's collusion everywhere, and I'm going to bring on Jack Ford, 60 Minute Sports, and he's a legal analyst, and I've known Jack for a long time, and, you know, I believe collusion, Jack, is everywhere. Explain in layman's terms, Jack, what collusion is.
It's, in many ways, you look at it as if collusion is in the eye of the beholder. You know, collusion is another word, and it's a sinister-sounding word for an agreement. Most agreements that we are involved in, you mentioned a couple right now, most agreements that we're involved in throughout the course of our life is the way we do business, the way we function. Collusion means you've created an agreement between at least two people, but the essence of that agreement is that somehow you're going to shortchange somebody else. That somehow somebody else is not going to get the opportunity to get a better deal because you and I have agreed that we're going to put a limit or a ceiling on what we're willing to pay somebody. So essentially, it's the bad side of agreements that we do all the time in life. But the real question is your agreement now either illegal or unethical? Is it going to be called collusion because you're hurting somebody else as a consequence?
Is there ever good collusion for the consumer? For instance, if the NFL owners did collude to keep prices down and my ticket remains $60, not $360, is collusion ever potentially good for a consumer?
Sure. As a matter of fact, there are some exceptions to antitrust law. And antitrust law basically is focused on collusion. You know, again, we'll keep it in the sports area. Antitrust law would be if the owners of a couple of teams say, you know what, guys, this payroll is costing us way too much. So let's all decide that from now on we're not paying a wide receiver more than X amount of dollars. All right, that's the bad side. But collusion, as you said, can be very good, and the law says antitrust agreements can be acceptable if they believe that it's in the benefit of the consumer.
Okay.
In other words, if you put a couple of companies together and they say, look, we can do better if we merge our forces here and we can provide a product cheaper than before. So there are times when they can be beneficial to the consumer. And you and I said, we love it if something's going to cost us less, even though it's the product of some agreement on parts of people.
All NFL owners technically are under one company. You know, I hear these NFL owners meetings. I think of slippers and bathrobes and cognac and, you know, Jack, and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, these guys never have handshake deals. Am I too cynical to suggest that in all pro sports, these billionaires got rich for a reason and there are sort of wink, wink, nudge, nudge stuff going on, or am I too cynical?
Well, Colin, you can be too cynical, but you can still be right. You know, and in some instances, as you said, it's hard to believe that in high-level businesses, and again, look, people are going to be very careful. They have lawyers all over the place to tell them what they can do and what they can't do. You know, in what we have basically in collective bargaining agreements is collusion that's been agreed to by both parties. Now, that's why you have a salary cap. Salary cap is collusion. It's everybody saying, we're not going to pay any more than X amount of dollars. But the other side agreed to it. The same with the NBA, where they have slotting for their draft choices. So you have it where two owners be playing golf someplace and say, man, you know, this is killing us. We got to figure out a way to save some money here. You know, maybe what we do is when a guy gets to seventh year in the league, we kind of get rid of him when we pick up somebody first year in the league. Even though he's got value, we can pay a third of the price for it. Does that ever happen? I would be surprised, Colin, if it didn't. You know, I know I'm trying to indict everybody in the business saying they all do it. But human nature is human nature, and people have conversations. So the question is somebody keeping an eye on it? And obviously the players' associations keep a very careful eye on this. And, you know, what's the difference between owners? Here's the problem. What's the difference between owners talking about their business, which owners do all the time, and problems they're having with their business and ways they can streamline it and save some money? And when does that cross the line from conversation and exchanging ideas to collusion that's inappropriate? And that's what's always, and we're seeing that now. If, in fact, you know, the Cowboys and the Broncos had a conversation about their wide receivers, does that amount to collusion? We're going to have to wait and see on that one.
Yeah, the NFLPA certainly thinks it does. Attorney Jack Ford, CBS News correspondent for 60 Minute Sports. We've known him for years, and we bring him on from time to time to clarify situations, and you did, as usual, a bang-up job. Congrats to you and your success, Jack. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Colin. Always a pleasure. You be well.
Jack Ford.
And now, for Geico's edition of Stuff Found in Your Car, we go inside your side door pocket.
Hello, yes, the crumpled receipt with gum in it. From your anniversary dinner, you sprang for expensive wine, your server was Beth. That dinner was a couple $100. Money you could get back if you switched to Geico and saved hundreds of dollars on your car insurance. I bet you'd save that receipt, frame it even. But really, where did I go wrong? Was it the corkage fee?
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com today.
Live in Los Angeles this week. My daughter's going to a volleyball camp, so I came out here and decided to just buy a house and live here. Just that simple. Okay, this is unbelievable. There's a pretty disgusting company out there called AshleyMadison.com, and I'm not a moralist on this stuff. If you want to cheat on your mate, whatever. But basically, it's a site where people go to have affairs, and that's not my cup of tea. But it's America, to each their own. So AshleyMadison.com, I don't know who Ashley Madison is. I really don't. Is that the name of everybody that somebody has an affair with? They're all named Ashley? I don't know. So they can do data to find out who uses their site. Now, of the 10 top cities in America that use their site, 9 of them, not a big surprise. They're sexy places. They've got warm weather. They're mingle places. They're social. They've got cafes. They're outdoors, or they're big business. New York City, Los Angeles, New Orleans, Houston, Vegas, San Diego, Austin, Texas. I totally get that, yeah. But number 2 is Pittsburgh. What? Pittsburgh? How did Pittsburgh squeeze in between Los Angeles and Vegas and New Orleans? What is a pickup line in Pittsburgh? Hey, baby, we just got a 3-star hotel in town. Want to check it out? Pittsburgh? Hey, baby, want to know the root of the word Allegheny? I'll show you some steel. Pow! How does Pittsburgh want to grab a Perante sandwich? It's got French fries inside the white bread. Will both be $2.80 by the end of it. How did Pittsburgh get into that list? And why is it called AshleyMadison.com? Is there something behind that, Stanzik? You're single. You're probably on that thing all the time.
Colin, it's for married people. I don't think you understood that.
What's that? Say it again.
It's for married people. You said I'm on it all the time.
No,
I'm
but
single. I don't think you understood the premise.
You don't have to be married to go to it. Just one of the people has to be a bad person. It's like one of the people. You can be single and go on Ashley Madison. Just one of the. It's just it's an area where married people go and do bad things.
I might just move to Pittsburgh.
No. Well, we have a question for Dan. Do you prefer Ashley or Madison? I think that's the bigger question for all.
Both sound hot to me.
Okay, whatever. That's enough. There's no reason to go in.
You asked.
I know I did. I didn't ask. Actually, Vince put it on the board.
You read it.
Okay, can I go on I got to go on one of my things where I get kind of worked up on stuff, you know? And we got the All-Star game tonight. It is today and tomorrow are the slowest days of the year in sports radio. And they're the slowest days. So I'm going to ask America from this point forward to do a very mature thing. I think it takes an adult to admit you get what you pay for. Because when you admit you get what you pay for, it's painful to a lot of people. Because the best stuff costs money, and not everybody has it. But it's an unbelievably adult thing when it comes to food, travel, real estate, education, healthcare. We know that there are no discounts here. Ames, Iowa is cheaper than Laguna, and it will be forever, and there's a reason. So I saw this yesterday, the real value of $100 in each state. This is by the taxfoundation.org. And it shows you how much the tax value is, what $100 is worth, and how far your dollar goes. In Mississippi, $100 is $115. In Kansas, it's $110. In Hawaii, it's $86. In California, it's $89. You do realize, and I realize, and we all realize, there is a reason. Like, I could move to California and complain about the taxes, and they're not great. But it's 73 with a breeze every day. They don't get hailstorms. They don't get tornadoes. They don't get snow. It is warm virtually every day I live here. And that's okay. Like, I'd read these magazines all the time. They'd be like, best places to retire. You'll buy, like, Kiplinger's or Money Magazine, and they always show this really cute couple on the cover. Best places to retire. And it's always this small town that's affordable in the middle of nowhere where they brag about how the gas is cheap. Well, the gas needs to be cheap. It's 36 miles to a grocery store. Okay? What am I going to tell my wife if I live in that town at 52? Honey, there's a pie eating contest at City Hall tonight. Want to go? It's a very adult thing. It's not elitist. It's not snobby. It's honest. The best things, places, cost more money. I was in Nashville a month ago. Nashville's one of my 10 favorite cities in the country. Nashville's a lot more expensive to buy a home in Nashville than it is in Hoover, Alabama. Why? Because Nashville's a better place with more to do. It's got an unbelievable culinary scene. It's got pro sports. It's got college sports. It's got music scene. It's got all these cool little unique parts of town. It's got a major university and academic center. It's got a great hospital. That's why Nashville's more expensive than most places in the South, because it's really cool. And there's smart people everywhere, and there's talented people everywhere. All right, Peter, you got a minute and a half, buddy. Why is Pittsburgh the number 2 city in America for cheating marriages? Why?
I think it all comes down to money. And you'd be surprised. There's a lot of new money in Pittsburgh. I was there a few months back and was floored by all the changes since I was there 5 or 6 years ago. Fracking has become a big business there. And lots of people who never had money, generations of families who never had money, suddenly have a lot of money. Western Pennsylvania is changing. Had the price of gas not plummeted a year ago or whatever that was, it would even be more money. It was on a much higher trajectory before that happened.
You know,
if it keeps growing, it could almost become, if you go back in time 50 years ago and look at Dallas population, look at Dallas's money, it's not there. And if natural gas continues to grow, Pittsburgh could be a very different place in the future.
That's interesting. You know, Pittsburgh is actually, Peter, you may know this, it's becoming a little bit of a tech hub. It's got its imprint on some tech companies. That's very interesting. So he said fracking's going on there. Yeah, I bet it is. Yeah, all sorts of fracking going on in Pittsburgh, if you know what I mean. I'm not getting into that. All right, we got to get out of this break. This is just trouble. This hour is just not healthy for my career. We've got an FCC and bosses to deal with. I'm sure Mo's love this hour. This is not going anywhere.
Want more of the Herd? The Thundering Herd Podcast.
Sports is cyclical. I mean, there are certain organizations that have traditional advantages, geographic advantages, especially in college sports. But sports are cyclical. I was talking about this yesterday on the show, the SEC Media Days. I think Alabama's going to win a bunch of football games, but their years of dominating that conference, they're over. Auburn's too good. Texas A&M, Georgia, Tennessee's a year away. Arkansas will be good. Florida needs 2 years. Too many good teams now. They've expanded. Missouri's even dangerous. Texas A&M, watch out. LSU's always able to go toe-to-toe. That doesn't mean Alabama won't win games, but it's cyclical. When USC dominated the Pac-12 years ago, the conference was a mess. UCLA was bad. Now UCLA is really good. Washington was unwatchable. Now they're a bowl team. Oregon was average. Now they got Chip Kelly and a new coach, and now they're dominating the conference. So everything is cyclical. And in baseball, it was down. It didn't have a lot of interesting young stars, and suddenly it's got a bunch of them. It has got several young, and I'm not talking good players. Mike Trout's a Hall of Fame level player. Bryce Harper's a Hall of Fame level player. Houston's got a couple of kids. They are unbelievable. And hey, baseball's had a rough 10 years. The Big Ten has had a very rough 10 years in football. That's about to change. Harbaugh, James Franklin, Urban Meyer, elite recruiters at traditional powers. If you could buy that stock, it's $12 today. It's going to be $22 in 2 years. Plus, they're going to sign a big fat TV contract with a network, raises for coaches, retain the best coaches, better facilities. The Big Ten's a buy. It had a rough 10 years. Baseball right now today, there are young stars, and they are unbelievable, and they're everywhere. And I don't have any idea why. Aaron Boone joining me, my buddy. I had Eric Karros on earlier, and he said maybe it's the youth baseball thing. You look around the home run derby. You look around baseball, Machado kid at Baltimore, Trout, Harper, half a dozen arms, the kid in Chicago, the slugger, Rizzo, the other kid, Bryant. Why? Aaron, what is going on in the sport with all these 22, 23, 24-year-old megastars?
Man, I have no idea. The travel baseball is interesting. Obviously kids playing more baseball growing up, way more games, way more play. When we were growing up, you played your 12 Little League games a year. You had your practice. It was that season only. Then you put your equipment away, right? It went on to the next sport. I still think it's important for kids to play other sports, but there's no question that the exposure, the coaching, the amount of play that these kids are having is paying off. And then when you consider, how Latin America, Puerto Rico, the Dominican, obviously, Venezuela, now it's more and more Cubans are coming over and playing in Major League Baseball. So there are a lot of great players. And Kurt Schilling said on our air yesterday, and it made me pause and think, he goes, I think you're watching in this All-Star game, we're going to look back and see a ton of Hall of Famers eventually. And I kind of looked at it today, looking at the rosters and jotting down names of guys I think are either going to be Hall of Famers or potential Hall of Famers. And I think you're in the double digits. And as many as 15 to 20 could get there. That's how many good young players or a handful of players that probably are already in the midst of Hall of Fame careers.
Take out Trout and Bryce Harper. It's obvious they've been established as elite players. Is there a young player out there? There's a kid for the Astros everybody's raving about. Is there a young guy that isn't on the public's radar yet that you think is superstar or really close to it level?
Well, Carlos Correa is that shortstop for Houston you're talking about. He is absolutely there. But, Machado's a guy that, with Baltimore, that was in the Derby last night, that, he burst on the scene as a young player, and he was this up-and-coming shortstop, but because of J.J. Hardy and the fact that Baltimore was good, their need was at third base. So he's become this great third baseman that's had these injuries, but he's still so young, and we always envisioned when he first came up, he was having success as a hitter, kind of a doubles hitter, but we're like, ooh, that guy's going to fill out. And eventually he's going to be a 30 home run guy. I think he's got 18 homers now at the break. We're seeing that guy become kind of a monster now as far as a power player, but also this incredibly athletic. And if he stays at third base, we'll look back and say he's one of the great defensive third basemen of all time. He's that kind of athlete. Now, eventually he may go back to shortstop, but we're seeing him blossom now, kind of under the radar, I think, into that perennial 30 home run guy, 300 hitter, elite defender. He's a guy that we should be really paying attention to.
Former Yank Aaron Boone, the Herd on ESPN Radio. Since 1995, 88 of 123 teams in first at the All-Star break made the playoffs, which is good for the Dodgers, good for the Cards. I look at the Yankees. How are they doing it? I mean, they come into the season with a bunch of old guys, didn't know their number 2 starter was. I don't even know, is it just because the AL East, we talked about being cyclical, is just not very good now?
I don't think it's not dominant like it's been, but I think it's okay. I think across the board, especially, it's okay. The 5 teams in that division, top to bottom, can still beat you up a little. It's not 10 years ago AL East, but it's still a solid division, and I think maybe top to bottom as solid as any other division. The Yankees have pitched enough in their starting rotation. Their lineup's dynamic. I mean, with A-Rod playing the way he is, with Teixeira doing what he does, and now you've got Ellsbury and Gardner, and what they bring at the top from kind of a on-base speed, Gardner a little bit of power. McCann's had a bounce-back year, so it's a really kind of an under-the-radar good offense. And then, with Miller and Betances at the back end of a bullpen, especially in today's game where the bullpen is huge, they get you to the 6th, 7th inning with a lead, it's over now. Yeah. And they've got that kind of team brewing. I think they've got a guy in the minor leagues named Severino that I think can come up and help their pitching staff. And then if they're able to make a trade for a starting pitcher, keep an eye on the Yankees as a dangerous team in the postseason because, especially in the postseason, that bullpen becomes huge. They've got an offense that has some length to it, and they can close out games. If they get to the postseason, and I think can add another starter to go with Pineda and Tanaka, and we'll see how they hold up, they can do that. They're a dangerous team in the postseason, I think.
You were at that home run derby, and you have a history, a legacy in Cincinnati. I was saying earlier, every time I go to one of these Salt Lakes or Indianapolis cities, these mid-sized cities, and they host events, they do a better job than the big cities because they don't have all the options of the big cities, but the people care so deeply. It means so much to Indianapolis when they get a Super Bowl. The entire town is all in. New York barely cared about the Super Bowl. They got their lives and stuff to do. You're in Cincinnati, the home run derby. It feels like that this weekend means a ton to Cincinnati. Does it not?
Yeah, I mean, I played 7 years of my career here. I love it here. There's a love affair between, these fans and the Cincinnati Reds and their players that I've always known about. But to come here, I've got a couple of my kids with me, to see what it is like in this town right now has even blown me away. And last night at the Derby, we got lucky with the weather because they changed the rules a little bit at the last minute. And then we got a break in the weather. So the 4-minute format, Major League Baseball hit it out of the park with changing it, but then lucked out with the last-minute tinkering of the rule to drop it down to 4 minutes. It was an awesome event. The crowd it was electric. Boomer and Kruk and I were on our feet 3/4 of the time because of the build-up. Man, how do you use your timeout? Hurry up. And then Todd Frazier, the hometown kid, obviously coming up big. So it just added to this tension, this electricity, this drama in the crowd. That was really great. And we got to see some of these great young superstars take part in the event. And top to bottom, no one disappointed. There was no clunker of a guy. They all had some oohs and ah moments in the course of the Derby.
Yeah. It'll be on ESPN Radio, Fox TV, the All-Star Game tonight. Former Yank, former Red Aaron Boone. Good talking to you, man.
Thanks, Doug. Enjoy L.A.
Thanks.
Check out The Herd with Colin Cowherd weekdays from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio, ESPNRadio.com, and on ESPNU. The Thundering Herd Podcast.